I might have to go.
You want to sit by Larry? You want to sit by Larry? If you come late, you gotta sit in front.
Already went live? Oh, well, we should later then. That's fine.
Just like in church.
Just like that.
Right, yeah.
Bigger cup with the lid? Or is it one for Jenny?
One's for Jenny. I'm not double fisting it.
Stan.
I hope not.
The green? Matt, I don't hear anything.
What?
I don't hear anything.
She doesn't hear anything. She doesn't hear anything. Hey. Hi. No, I don't hear anything. Hey. No.
That's your coffee up there.
I'm gonna kind of come over here and just awkwardly talk to you so she can listen
So,
to the
yeah,
sound.
we're testing the
Yes.
sounds. Yeah.
I'm gonna lean in. Maybe
Lean-
put my
lean-
head on
lean
your
real
shoulder.
quick. I'll cuddle with
Yes?
you.
You want me to keep talking? Are you good? Yes? Volume okay? Okay.
Where would I put my journal?
Do you need a napkin or can you just hold the cookie? You need a napkin?
I didn't think about what I talked about testimony-wise.
Oh, you just grilled me?
Yeah. I figure I told it enough that it is what it is, and that's why I don't want to filthy the story. Check.
Have to do as much as I like to.
So you should have his. Oh no, not his. Close that window.
What window?
That tab.
I looked away.
Change
This scooter like that.
not top check. There you go. Okay. So
Still have audio?
Is it on?
Yes, it's on. Should be on right now. Yes. Perfect.
Yeah, we're good.
starting.
Here, the mic.
6:32. Okay, I'm easing into it. What time you got? So. You want me to wait 10 more minutes? No.
Hold pen on this.
All right. We're going to get going. I was being too nice about it, and I've been corrected. So, stop yapping. We're going to start. No. Thank you guys for coming out tonight. I wasn't sure with the adjusted schedule how many would come out tonight, Friday night and stuff. So, thank you all for being here tonight and making tonight a priority. So, let me just introduce you to, or mention a couple of logistical details, and then I will hand it over to Brian and Jenny. So, if you have not received or taken one of these sheets from over here, maybe lift up your hand and I'll get you one. It's the same thing, without as much color.
People want to hear you.
Thank you. It's the same thing that we had on the, that we emailed out to you. Somebody else pass those around for me, please. So just so you know, that's what that is. Skylar, no, out. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, it's all memorized. So tonight, some have asked about ballots because we're doing a lot of extra stuff because we're just not sure what the weather's going to hold for us over the weekend. So appreciate you guys adjusting and making a priority to come out tonight. We are going to have church on Sunday, so if you get up and the weather's not looking great and it's it's bad or whatever, 5 of us will be here anyway, no matter what the weather's like. So, okay, so if it's safe to come, in your estimation, come to church and we'll be here. All right, and then we'll have the business meeting after church. We'll take a 10-minute break after church and allow guests to transition out, and then the Petries will things and move on out. Good evening, ladies. Good evening. Come on in. That's okay. That's okay. There's a couple chairs right up here too, if you'd like. So, Nancy does have some absentee ballots here tonight. If you know that either you already know what you're gonna vote, or if you want to just take one to have. Or you can also send an email to vote@oakgrove.cc. So if you have that email at home, click the link. It'll actually put all the text in there for you. And all you have to do is add your name and then put your yes or no at the bottom too. So vote@oakgrove.cc, and then those who are counting votes will have that on Sunday morning. So, okay?
They're going to take phone calls too.
And thank you. We are going to take phone calls. Again, most of this is weather because we just don't know what the weather is going to do. So we're just trying to have contingencies. So, yes, we'll accept phone calls from 11:30 to 11:50, which means if you call at 11:52, it will not be counted, just FYI, okay? 11:30 to 11:50 if you need to make a phone call. And then we would ask you to come in and actually sign your ballot on Monday or Tuesday following. So, hi. Yes, the only time he wants to hug and snuggle is when we're up in front of everybody. So, what's that? I'll take them when I can get them. That's exactly right. So, let me pray for our time tonight, and then I'll explain our flow, and then we'll get going. Father in heaven, we thank you so much that we can be here tonight to get to know the Petries better. Thank you for everyone that's here tonight. Thank you for the families that are represented, for the loved ones, for the children and the students that are represented by those that are here and loved by those who are here. So just pray for a good time of getting to know the Petries, and as we as a church and as the Petries seek your will for their life as well, Lord. We look to you with great confidence and hope, because we know that that you have a wonderful plan that's orchestrated, and we are just kind of walking it out. And so we want to be prayerful and discerning in everything that we do. And more than anything else, we thank you for Jesus. Thank you for creating the church through the power of Jesus. Christ our head, and we as members act and live out the gospel in so many different ways, and so we thank you for the ability to do that. We love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. So I'll introduce the Petries, and then they are going to begin by sharing their testimonies, and just to let you hear a little bit about their story. And some time for Q&A. We're going to have to figure that out, but Mom's busy back there, so that's loud. What was I going to say? Yeah, so then Brian will take questions for you. If you have specific questions for Jenny, she'll answer those too. But also we have some search team members here, or elders, if you just have questions, other kinds of questions as well. Feel free to fire those away also. So, all right, anybody have any questions about the process for the weekend? Sir?
Also, if anybody has, because a lot of times you can't think of it now, but if you have questions during the, later on, get a hold of like the search team or one of the elders,
right,
or Pastor Matt, we can try to get you the answers. So
yep.
Don't make this the last time you think you can ask questions.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Opportunity before we vote too, correct? Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we'll call the meeting to order, take a time for questions, and then go to the vote during the meeting at that point. So, yep. That sounds good. Yeah, we should be questioned out at that point. So, yep. All right. So, Brian and Jenny Petrie, and we'll just let you guys kind of take it from here. So, you ready?
Thank you.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. We've been, I guess I'll speak for both of us, that we've been incredibly impressed with the hospitality and the friendliness of everyone we've met so far. And so thank you for that. My name is Brian. It's my wife, Jenny. She goes by Jenny with an I, but her whole name's Jennifer. Matt asked that we start with our testimonies. And so looking at my life, I grew up in Janesville, Wisconsin, about, 3.5 hours from here, right? As a baby, I was dedicated in a Baptist church, Converge, and I grew up there until I was 18 and left for college. My time was interesting for a lot of reasons, because when you grow up in a church and you don't see many contexts or many variances of what different churches are like, you just kind of assume this church is what church is, what Christianity is. Grew up in this church, went to Sunday school, went to Awana. My dad was a deacon and my mom was in charge of women's ministry and VBS and things like that for a while. And so I grew up sometimes going to church 4 or 5 times a week, and that was my life. And so I think I gave my sinner's prayer, what said, "Dear Jesus, I'm a sinner, I believe in you, come in my life," etc., etc. And maybe 4 or 5 years old. But I still remained within the Christian context, within the Christian community, and that's where I spent my time. It wasn't very much until 8th grade when I started to realize that this is a thing I got to do. This isn't because my parents brought me to a community that I happened to find myself in. I mean, I'm very fortunate to grow up in that community and within parents that wanted me to be within the church. But that's where I was. And so right around 6th and 7th grade, I was doing Awana, and I did not like Awana. Didn't like it because I didn't like the noisiness of the kids. And I was a kid myself saying, I don't like all the noise. I don't like all the chaos. I want to go sit in the corner. And so it turns out soon after that point, I'd be diagnosed with this anxiety disorder, which was triggered by all these people. And so I dropped out of Awana for that reason, because it just wasn't a good spot. And so I had a youth pastor that still to this day is one of the best Bible teachers that I've ever been around. He taught very short, and every time he taught, I said, I want to know more, I want to hear more. And so I ended up begging this man, said, disciple me, be my mentor. And it took maybe a year and a half until I got to the point where he said, fine, I'll do that. And so I sat down with him and started studying James together, and it was revolutionary in my faith. This is one, I got the attention of the expert, the man that I looked up to so much, but also learning how to read the Bible for myself more than memorizing verses for candy. Now, that's not what Awana is. Don't let me discount what Awana is. I value it. I think it's a good thing. But I think there's a lot of parenting and a lot of things that have to go along with it for it to be most effective. So 7th, 8th grade is when I really started to realize my faith is something I need to own, and that's when I could really think that's when I saw Jesus as my Lord and Savior rather than a 4-year-old. Moving forward from there, I moved up from Awana and went to youth group and went on some different mission trips through the youth group. Bayou La Batre, Alabama, South Dakota, Costa Rica, a couple others. But on one of these mission trips is when I should start with this. My family, my siblings, I'm the youngest of 4. I'm the baby of the family. And like I said, with my parents being leaders in the church, we had the youth group over at my house a lot. And so I'd grow up and I'd have to go to bed because I was young and all the youth group would still hang out, and I just wanted to be with them. I wanted to be with the cool older kids. And so when I finally got to youth group, moving from Awana, where am I going with that?
You're at your mission trip.
Oh, we're going on this mission trip. So all my friends were older than me. That's where I was going. And so when I was in 8th grade, the church I was at separated middle school from high school. And so the middle schoolers went their own trip, the high schoolers went their own trip. And so I was kind of aged out from being with my friends. And so I was on this particular trip and spent a lot of time on my own. It's also when I was trying to figure out how to deal with my anxiety at that time too. And so I was listening to music and trying to say, okay, God, I'm here to serve you, I guess. What am I doing? And it was on that trip that God very clearly said, you're going to work for me and not yourself. Now, up to that point, my dad was an engineer, my mom's a nurse, my siblings all went to college. I thought I was going to do the same thing, go to college, make a lot of money, be an engineer. It'll be great. I want to have a nice little oak tree and a nice little dog and a nice little family, and things are going to be awesome. And that's what my plan was. But then when God says, you're going to work for me and not yourself, I said, okay. And so being still from an engineer type mindset, I thought to myself, if I'm going to do this, what's the best way to do it? What's the best way to get prepared? And so in my mind, that said model after the youth pastor I was growing up with. And he went to seminary and had his MDiv, and so I said, fine, I'm going to go to undergrad, I'm going to study Bible, and I'm going to go to seminary and get my MDiv, because if I'm going to do this, God, I'm going to do it the best I can. And so that led me to Minneapolis, Minnesota to go to school, study Bible and theology and psychology. And then after I was done with that, I knew the program there wasn't to train pastors. They taught really good theology and really good basis, but I wanted to go and get more training. And I wanted a school that combined counseling and more of a holistic vision of who people are rather than just preaching. And so looking for schools that did that led me to Denver Seminary. And so I So we packed up our bags and we headed out to Denver Seminary. Spent 3 years there. Got my MDiv in pastoral care and counseling just this past December. While I was in seminary, I went out there being told by my undergrad school that I was going to have a full ride scholarship. And I said, it's going to be awesome. I'm going to go and not have to pay anything, and things are going to be great. And we get there, and it said, no, you don't. And so I said, I need to find a job. And so I started working as a carpenter, and I did that for a bit, but I wanted to combine my schooling with ministry experience. So I started looking for internships at churches I could be at. But if you go to full-time school and church internship and a carpenter, that ends up being 75 hours a week. And in a young marriage, that wasn't great. And so we ended up getting the church that we were serving at to go ahead and give us more hours and more opportunities to serve. And I was able to cut the carpentry off. And that leads me to where I am now, I guess. Jenny and I met when I was 15. She went to a different school. She lived in a different city. She lived in Janesville. I actually lived in Milton, Wisconsin, about 20 minutes away from her. So we were in different school districts. And so we only met at youth group. And we were getting ready to go on this mission trip to Costa Rica. And I remember looking in the youth room for one of these parents' meetings while we were talking about what to pack and what the rules are and everything. And like, who is that? Hope she's going. and turns out we became really good friends along the trip. And we came back, and we were almost back to the church parking lot in our van, and I was thinking, I need to keep talking to her, but I don't have her number. And so we were listening to music on her iPod, and I was able to steal the iPod from her, and I put a password on it, and as we were leaving, I said, if you want the password, you gotta text me. And since then, we haven't stopped talking. And so she's my partner in ministry. I'll let her talk about herself a little bit, but she's a teacher. Passion for homeschool, passion for foster care, taking care of others, which is definitely part of her story that she'll share. Is there any questions there so far in my story? Anything you're curious about that I missed? No? One thing I'll share a little bit more about my faith. That was a lot more of a background about myself. I mentioned the part about growing up in the Baptist church where that's all Christianity was. And that's a big part of my story. Because the school I went to for Bible and theology taught it in a way where they don't say, here's what is correct, learn this. They taught, here is what the Bible says, here's what all these different people throughout history have thought, and here's why they thought it, and here's all the problems with it. If you want to know what I think, talk to me after class. And that was an incredibly rigorous way to teach it. I'm sure it was a lot more energy for the professors and the school to teach in that way, but I incredibly valued it because it made me actually think, what do I think and why do I think it in that way? And so once I started as a freshman in college, when I realized, okay, what I thought about baptism, that's actually kind of a narrow view. There's a lot more really good views on that than what I thought. And what I thought about, what I thought, it was these little tiny doctrines that slowly escalated to the point of saying, okay, I thought I knew this about a God. Do I actually know that too? I was taught this. What are all the other sides of it? And so it got me to a point where I got kind of angry at God. And I started calling myself an atheist while I was in college, in Bible school, because it wasn't just agnostic. I was angry. I said, God, you're not there. I'm praying to you. I don't feel anything anymore. What's going on? And what I thought I knew, I didn't know, and so I was just very confused. Now, part of the schooling was this program I was in that was called the Pre-Seminary Initiative. And it was this group of, I think there's like 14 of us, a professor and a couple graduate students, and we all met together regularly. The opposite. To refute a calling to ministry. Because often you see people who grow up saying, I want to be a pastor. My dad was a pastor. I want to do that too. And the goal of this group was to say, okay, is that really for you? Is that God's calling? Is that your wiring? And a success would be saying no just as much as a success was saying yes. And so part of this group, we did personality assessments, we did books, we did retreats, all sorts of things to get to know ourselves better, understand what is our path. And I was on this retreat with this group, and I was talking one night late with the professor, and I said, explaining this frustration I had where I didn't know what I thought anymore, and I didn't trust what I was being taught by the church, and I was just kind of angry. And I got this professor, he said, what if the sun's shadow is evidence of the sun? I didn't realize that was a Switchfoot lyric. That's a Christian band lyric that I didn't recognize. But it was, what if the absence that I felt I had, what if that actually was my faith? What if the craving I had to know God, to be with God, to have God hold me, to be able to pray to him, what if that actually was more than just an absence of it? And that suggested a whole lot more. Now, that effectively said, okay, instead of being lost in the ditch down here, I'm actually much more over here. I'm not great, I'm not perfect, I'm still confused and angry, but I'm not as lost and forgotten as I thought I was, and that was a great catalyst to bring me back. Yeah. Going to seminary was an interesting experience because you go to seminary and you have people in the same room who have business degrees, who have owned businesses. You have people who are 65 and they decided that I should go back to school and study something. And so there's just so many varieties of people. And then there's people like me who came straight out of undergrad saying, I just spent 4 years studying this book. I'm ready for more. And so there was this period where they would catch up and try to balance everyone out. It was a great experience being there. While I was there, part of the pastoral care and counseling program was to spend time at a hospital being a chaplain. It's one of the reasons why I liked that program so much. It's called clinical pastoral education, where they teach pastors in particular not to hurt people they're trying to help. Because that's normally something that the church doesn't get taught, and especially pastors don't get taught. And so how do you do no harm? How do you meet people where they're at when they're in crisis, when someone's dying, when you can hold their hand? And so it was this rigorous program, which I did just the first part of 4. If I wanted to become a professional chaplain, I'd have to do it 3 more times. But it was enough to say, or where the school felt confident in me enough that I can go ahead and hold people's hands in pain and not say, just pray harder or have more faith. Are things that tend to make things worse. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Jenny, I guess. Any more questions on that yet? No? Okay.
You're a long-winded preacher.
Sunday morning was good, preacher.
38 minutes.
I don't think mine's going to be that long. I was actually born in Florida. My parents got married after college and decided to move down to Florida with some friends. So that's where I was born. All of their parents, all my family is in Wisconsin, Illinois. I'm the oldest of 3. I have 2 younger siblings, and I'm also one of the oldest of 24 cousins. My dad has 8 siblings. So I grew up as the caregiver, the caretaker. I like taking care of people and babies, and that was my role I went into without a second thought. And then the most devastating thing ever happened in middle school. I was moved to Wisconsin across the country, a whole different culture. Like I didn't expect to have culture shock in the same country, but it was totally different. It was right before my 7th grade year, and so I went to school in 7th grade, and I had actually learned everything. Like it was the same science class that I had taken in 6th grade, and it was the same math, a lot of the same math content that I had taken in 6th grade, and so I was confused. Yeah, I think curriculums just don't line up. Anyways, I'm a teacher now, so that sticks out to me. But my dad said, this school must not be great. Let's move you over to this Catholic private school. And so I ended up going to 6 different schools in 5 years, trying to, yeah. And so, but up until that point, I was kind of just shifting through life, being the caretaker, being the good person. I mean, my mom took me to church and Sunday school every morning, and then my dad would take me to Catholic Mass at night. Definitely had a more rounded viewpoint, but it also brought a lot of conflict into their marriage and into the family. And so right about that time when we moved to Wisconsin, I was just like, I just need to go with whatever religion, I called it, that my husband is. This fighting thing is just getting ridiculous. And then 8th grade year, I found the youth group at this Baptist church in town, and that is what made all the difference. I started not just learning about God, but knowing God, taking it more serious, having a different motive for why I was serving, why I was taking care of people, doing something at church or for church every single night of the week. I loved it, especially once I could drive and take myself there. I didn't have to try to balance what my mom wanted to do or what my dad wanted to do. So I was going to youth group, I was leading small groups, I was in small groups, I was doing Awana leading, I was in the choir, you can name it, I was there. And that church was named Bethel Baptist, where he grew up, and Bethel University would come and their choir would sing at our church for part of their spring tour. And I hosted some students from Bethel University, and they stayed up all late hours of the night, and I was, probably freshman or sophomore in high school, and I said, oh, that sounds awesome, I want to go there. And I mostly wanted to go to a Christian school so that I could figure out a good Christian basis, I guess, before starting off. And so I went to Bethel University as well. I went for a double major in elementary education and teaching English as a second language. I definitely enjoyed it. I studied abroad in Guatemala for a semester, and so that was huge. My parents were just shocked, like, you're going where, for how long, without us, what? But it was great to just step out on my own in my own faith, having God to depend on when I was lonely by myself, feeling lost in another culture, but so that, and then just helping me understand where other kids come from when they come here, with no knowledge of our culture, no knowledge of our language. It was a good experience, but yeah. So after I graduated, we got married, and I ended up starting an ESL program, English as a second language, at a charter school in Minneapolis. It was actually, the principal was raised Catholic, and we spent a lot of time talking and going back and forth of what made her have that decision and how much it's impacted her kids. And anyways, it was a great experience. Most of the kids there were Muslim Somali students mixed in with a couple Hispanic students, and that was cool. And then we moved to Denver, and I taught ESL and elementary until having our little guy. In this past school year, I've stayed home with him. Yeah. That was it.
She was terrified to speak to you guys tonight. So, I think this is the point where we open up to questions and see are there any thoughts on anything that you said. You said this, what did that mean? Or can you talk more about that? Or
Something else you want to
or anything else? I think we're an open book tonight.
Can you talk a little bit about your church in Colorado? And
Yeah.
what some of your responsibilities were and what led you here?
Yeah, so the question was, talk about my church in Colorado, what my responsibilities were, how that developed, and then how are we going to end up sitting in this room today? Like I said, started looking for internships when I was in seminary, because I wanted to dovetail the seminary education with hands-on experience. Started working for a church plant that was a branch off of Promise Keepers, and we did that for about 3 or 4 months. You don't hear about Promise Keepers very much anymore, and there's probably a reason for that, but they're still around, and we served them for a little bit until the seminary. Some of my professors told me pretty clearly, this isn't the purpose of this program. What they're asking you to do isn't why you're here. As I was building them stages and websites, and I was being more of a cheap labor for them than anything else. And so they asked me to go ahead and continue on from there. And so I ended up finding this church called Bergen Park. And they said, we have 4 kids, we have a closet, do something. We need a youth ministry. And it was great.
They had just built this new building and let the teenagers choose what space they wanted to meet in. And it is a super small classroom. Like,
It was designed, all the blueprints label it as a storage closet, and they said, sure, this is what you want, you can have it. And so we said, okay, let's develop this program. And so I was working as the director of youth ministry when I first started there. Once I got the church to go ahead and cut out my carpentry, they replaced it with being the church administrator and the facility manager. And so I was kind of the point person for a lot of different things. And so we did that until, I guess November, December, they went ahead and said, you probably should be just doing more youth ministry, so I became the youth pastor there. The program was started with 4 kids. Now it's about 65 to 70, and that's mixed between middle school and high school students. The Evergreen community, it's an interesting area because it's about 20-25 minutes from downtown Denver, but it feels like you're in the country, in the mountains in the country, where people will live there so that they can say, this is my property, stay off of it. Where they can say, wife, family, stay here, I'm gonna go down the hill, I'm gonna work, then I'll be back. And so it was a very isolated community, a lot of homeschool students. There's 4 or 5 families that we had that they said they were not shameful or bashful that they were homeschooling so that they could isolate their children because they were bullied, they had things they didn't like, and so we're going to do it better this time. And so when you isolate kids like that, there's some extra work for me. Yeah, so served there. Just recently got to the point where it's time to separate the middle school and high school because it's grown too much, and their original middle schoolers I started with are now juniors and seniors in high school, and it's hard to have 11-year-olds with 18-year-olds, and it's also hard to be creating brand new curriculum for through their whole time that they're in youth group. What led us here, finishing seminary, I've been told, is the time to look for jobs. Part of it, I think, is we got to a point where we said, we aren't really going to be able to grow much more here. We started as interns that didn't have very much experience at all, next to nothing, and we really wanted to serve somewhere where we were, what's the word? Able to grow more pastorally, rather. Doing the administrative and the facilities and the youth, it was a lot of the get-it-done kid type of mentality that I was struggling with. Let Brian do it, rather than...
if there's a copy machine problem, call Brian. If there's the door wouldn't shut all the way, just call Brian, which is fine. But.
I mean, that's what my job was, and so on the one hand, I wanted to be able to spend more time in people's lives, to get to know people more. And so we started looking for different work that way, and so...
we kind of maxed out our little closet room,
yeah.
and there wasn't really much hope to be able to move anywhere else, or the group anywhere else.
But no, it was a great experience, learned a whole lot. During my time there, the lead pastor I started with retired, and all the staff and elders all transitioned off. And so that was a learning experience, learned a whole lot about what church development looks like there. Yeah. Did that answer the question? Anything else? Yeah.
So, given the experience in that example, do you see yourself more as a developer and somebody else sustains and continues growing it, or a sustainer grower? Kind of like when a company gets to a point where it's handed off to somebody to take to the next level.
Well, that's a good question.
On that, what are you looking for to
Yeah.
where you need to go?
The question was, am I more of a developer or a sustainer? We do this together. I don't have a label for myself in the back of my head, so as I'm thinking about it, I remember being incredibly excited with the closet and 4 kids because I saw there's so much potential here. And so with all that excitement, I think maybe more of a developer. But at the same time, can I do a both and? That doesn't really work. That's an easy answer. Where I think I recognize how long it takes to develop trust in kids and teenagers, to develop a relationship, and I'm willing to put the time in for that. Where I don't think there's any set of programming or just do these things, just repeat what I've done, and this ministry is going to grow, and you're going to get all these new people. It's not that. Now, making the decision to leave Bergen Park was incredibly hard. I'm so close to my kids there, and they still don't know that we're even here. And so it's not, part of this, the pre-seminary group that I was part of in undergrad, we did all these different, are you prophet, priest, king, like what kind of role are you? And we did all these little assessment tests, and the test said I was an apostle. And I said, what does that mean? And they defined the apostle as someone who starts things up, gets it going, builds leaders, then heads out. And I said, that's unique. I kind of like that. But I don't like change. I don't like picking up and moving. And so it's, I don't know. Maybe that gives you an answer. I don't know.
So what kind of things can the church do to help you guys succeed in your ideas?
Yeah. The question was, what kind of things can the church do to help us succeed in our ideas and goals and plans and in the ministry? A lot of it's the culture. Having a culture where the youth and the kids aren't just a group of people that you push away on Sunday morning, let them do their thing. I'm not asking for full integration. I'm not asking for older adults to feel like they have to be playing grandparents all the time. But having a culture where we recognize that teenagers can take ownership for their faith. And we can build that up in a way where parents can be involved in that. And it's not just our job to entertain. Youth group isn't just babysitting. It's not, Awana's not just drop your kid off. There's more behind it. That would be a huge piece. And I think I see a lot of that already here. I've always dreamed of serving in a church where there was a list of adults that wanted to mentor more students than I had, where they were eager to be involved in the students' lives. That'd be incredible. I don't even know that'd be a great problem to have too many adults that want to be involved. What do you think?
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, what is your needs for the church to help you? I mean, there's a lot to it. That's both, I guess. I mean, what kind of things can the church do to help you?
How about community?
Yeah. I guess right now I've been asking some women I'm close to, I guess, in the church we're at now. I've been really wanting to start like a mom's group or even just like a women's group. And they're like, well, we have small groups. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're part of a small group. But there's other ways and there's other things that women can do together. I don't know. So me and the women's director got together and we planned the soup swap event a couple weeks ago. and she opened up her house for it. It was gonna be at her house. She had bought all these blankets and bought all these new mugs, probably from Goodwill, but still, it was gonna be really fun. And we were told that no one's gonna come to your house. This is Evergreen. Move it to church. And so we probably got not that much buy-in, I guess, to it. So maybe that kind of a community of, and we've already felt it, welcoming people into your homes. We're not used to that, but that's what I wanted. Sorry. Yeah. We've almost been feeling stuck where we're at right now. We finally were able to move closer to the church, which is what we really like. We like to be in the communities that we're serving at. And I don't know if you know much about Evergreen, but it is very expensive. Yeah. And on a teacher and pastor salary, it wasn't going to happen. And so God moved in big ways, and we got moved up there about a year ago. Where was I going with that? Oh, but it's a little tiny rental, and we won't really be able to grow foster care and reach out to kids that way. So there wasn't really room for foster care there. So I've just personally been feeling stuck, and I keep trying to do all these things, and I keep getting we've been kind of talking about where can we raise Seth, where can we raise our family, and have the community right there with us, if that makes sense.
Will it bother you that we serve 4 different communities and we're out here on the corner in the country?
You know, that's a great question. Will it bother us that we're serving 4 communities in the corner? That's honestly one of the things that excited us most. We came about a month ago, and we landed, and I told Jenny, I think this is Siberia. What are we doing here? And what I expected, because I've only, I think the slogan, I don't know if it's real or not, but it's about the journey, not the destination. Is that? We've driven through Iowa. We've never said this is where we want to be. And so when we came, I expected to see cornfields and farms, and that was about it. Which, I like farms. I grew up in Wisconsin. That's good. But I was expecting not much potential for growth, not much potential for ministry. What we saw was incredible instead. I mean, Vinton has community events twice a month scheduled out where everyone comes together and does drive us around town last month. And she's showed us all these different things. I said, I could make a schedule of special events for youth and children's ministry just within a 20-minute radius so easily. It would be no effort to find things to do. Being able to have Cedar Rapids within arm's throw, that's great too. So no, it doesn't concern me. At first it did, because I had this expectation that I was going to come to this little town with a little bit of Hicks and nothing else to do. And growing up in Minneapolis and then spending time in Denver. Hey, buddy. That's my son, Seth.
Hi, Seth.
Hi, Seth. He's turning 2 next week. And we spent a lot of time in the car today. Yeah. Yeah. You know, one of the things I'm excited about raising Seth is getting to raise him in the church. Now, sometimes the church has a lot of sausage making behind the scenes, where if you come on Sunday morning and you enjoy the meal, but you don't think about how did this get here. And so really craving a church where Seth can hang out, be part of the development of the church, and then still say, yes, Lord, I want to love you, and not be pushed away. And so that's pretty vital in our search for places where we settle down.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Part of it is youth and family. And I don't know that we've had a position that, it's always been a part of the senior pastor or whatever. What do you think about family issues? I know you have the background in counseling. What thoughts do you have on that?
What are my thoughts on family ministry in particular? When I look at family ministry, I think the tagline is that it's the parents who are the primary disciple makers of the children. And I think often, I'll talk about this on Sunday a little bit, the assumption is that the reason why parents aren't serving as disciples of their children is because they don't know they're supposed to be doing it. When in fact they do, they don't have the time and they don't know how. And so finding ways for the church to equip parents to go ahead and to have spiritual conversations with their children and not have the kid be weirded out by it, that's definitely part of it. Yeah.
What about families in conflict or older adults who no longer have family around them?
No, that's great. That's what about families in conflict or families with adults that aren't around anymore? I think the church has a hard time, at least I say the church as if we're all the same and everyone does things the same way. I think often churches will separate groups out and they'll say, okay, these are the children, these are the teenagers, these are the families with young kids, these are the empty nesters, and here's all the old people. And can I say that's wrong to separate them out that way? Now, my mentor that I have, he's probably 86, and he's been really struggling in his church because he feels that all the old people just keep being pushed out of the way. And they kind of function in their own way, their own church, their own community, and they're there because that's where they've been, and they're not dead yet, so we're still here. And if there's a way where the church could combine the vision of their ministry in a way that says this isn't just an extra group to push out. Like I said, I don't want to push out the children. I don't want to push out the teenagers just as their own groups. But to do that, recognize people as people, I think that'd be radical. And that goes back to looking at are older people involved in people's lives? Are they sharing from their stories? Now, people in conflict, families in conflict, which I think is almost every family in a lot of ways. It's not that one problem family. You know, as men, we tend to just say, fix it. What's the problem and fix it? And I don't think that's necessarily it. Sitting with it, being able to figure out what the problem is and where it came from. And so often, especially if you look at sin problems, we all have sin, we all have issues, and the goal often in Christian living is to say, I need to stop doing this, but I keep doing it. And so you start focusing on the sin. What is my habit? What is my problem? And you start almost worshiping that sin. Looking at, that's the problem. Why can't I stop? Without looking at what's behind it. What is it that's causing this? What am I believing about myself? What am I believing about God? What am I believing about others that is causing that sin to continue? And I wonder how much of that applies to conflict in families. What is the missing link in that? I think the church has a lot to do in that work. Yeah, it's a good question. You had something to add?
Off topic now.
Yeah, she lost it. Okay.
Are you guys still close with your families from Wisconsin?
Yes and no. My family, immediate family, I have a brother in West Virginia. I'm getting married in November. I've got a sister in Minneapolis and a sister in Wisconsin. They're all very busy in their work. My parents recently moved from Wisconsin to Minneapolis for a different job opportunity. And then it happens to be real close to my sister, who just had a baby as well. And so it's working out for them. My family was a family of coming and going. We were very close growing up when we had time for my dad to go on a business trip. My dad traveled 70% of the time for his work while I was in middle school and high school. And so it was just a lot of coming and going, where's Dad right now? Somewhere, but he'll be back. And that was kind of how it felt growing up. And so we still connect now, and there's no conflict. There's nothing that's keeping us. And so holidays will come and we'll get together. Now, Jenny's family, on the other hand, she said her dad's got 8 siblings and she's got 24 cousins. In my family, I've got cousins that I don't really remember their names of. In fact, my brother just asked for my phone number the other day. But, and I started dating this girl whose family got together all the time. All of her cousins, her dad's siblings, they all live within a couple hours of each other. And so they would have what, in my family, would be a big deal, fly across the country for this family reunion. They would do it on Tuesday afternoon. Or the Packer game's on, so everyone's going to come. Or, hey, let's go to Red Robin. Oh, let's invite Rick. And everyone comes. And
For the Packers?
yeah, for the Packers, even, yeah. You can talk more about your family, though.
I don't know. We were in town this past summer, and of course everybody wants to see and meet Seth, and so. But I think it was like the night before we left. My dad was like, "Oh, I should invite my brother over." Well, then his brother invited 2 of his other brothers. Well, and one of his other brothers invited 2 of his sisters, and everyone came over. So I mean, I grew up in Florida for most till I was in middle school, and so we'd come every summer. My dad was a teacher, and so we'd spend the summers on my grandma's farm. They bought a mobile home, and we would live on her farm for the summers, and he helped. My dad helped. But then we'd go back home, and we'd lose touch for the year. And so then moving back to Wisconsin in middle school, I got to be part of all those monthly bowling things, and yeah. I mean, I think it was the night we got back from our honeymoon, and my mom's like, "Why don't you guys come on over, let's have a dinner, tell us about your trip." And probably 10 cousins and 5 aunts and uncles were also there too. And so we video chat a lot still with my parents, my siblings. My sister will call. She's a senior in high school, definitely on senior slide. But she'll call during school just to see Seth and chat with us. And I'll call during bath time and puts the phone up so they can see him splashing around. And I think he, even with your family too, brought the families together.
Oh, yeah.
Watching him grow up, I mean, you can imagine. So on Sunday, actually, once we leave here, we're heading to the Dells to meet my parents and siblings and his parents, all in one room.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be great.
Run while you can. From the Dells.
Yeah. Well, we grew up going to the Dells quite a bit, being in Janesville. But, yeah, so our families...
We've been trying to find a happy medium with our family.
yeah.
I feel like I have lofty goals for what a family should look like, or how I want our family to look like, discipleship-wise and mentor-wise and whatnot. There's a couple authors that I've become familiar with now that I have all this free time of not teaching. Just kidding. So that we've been starting to really think about it.
Who are the authors that took you to the book?
For me personally, in motherhood is an author named Sally Clarkson. Familiar? She actually lives in Colorado Springs and has done Mom Heart conferences in the past, which developed into Mom Heart groups. And so I reached out. They have a Facebook group, and there's actually a group that meets 30 minutes away that I go to once a month. And they personally know her, and I'm just like, what? You just talked to her last week? And then stemming off of that, Jefferson and Alyssa Bethke, they just released with their mentor family something. So I've started digging deeper into what that is. They just released a podcast or 2, I think, for fathers. So he's been listening to that. Anybody else jump out at you?
Mike Foster maybe, but yeah.
Anybody else?
Hey, Brian, you mentioned the anxiety or whatever, when
Yeah.
you were in the waters and that. You know, you referenced it, obviously for a reason, but is there something that in the environment here that we want to make sure we don't put you in that would be a catalyst or a trigger, or is it something that you've outgrown, or?
So, question is, I mentioned in my story there's anxiety and there's some depression, and the question was how, as a church, can we help with that? Is it still something I'm dealing with? What triggers it? I've had a lot of counseling, and I think I've learned a lot of skills to know when it's not one of those things that's like a slap in the face. Well, sometimes it is. But often, usually it's something that there's a season that's pushing me there, and I say, okay, I need to retreat for a bit. I need to cope for a bit. And the way I cope is with building projects. If my hands are busy, I'm doing okay. And so I told Jenny early on in our marriage, if there's not a project that I'm working on, and not like an afternoon project, but something that I'm thinking through and spending a couple months working on, if that's not there, there's something wrong. That's a good indicator that I'm not. Now, why would someone who gets anxiety attacks from large groups of chaotic people become a youth pastor?
Seems fine by me.
It's the relationship.
There's relationships there. It's not chaos. It's organized chaos. You know, when I didn't share this part of my story. When I first had my calling to ministry, when God said I was going to work for Him and not myself, I wrote in my journal about it, and I wrote underneath it, "But God, I'm not going to do youth ministry." And I wrote that because I didn't like kids, because I didn't like the chaos. I said, I'm not going to do that. I'll serve you, I'll go to school, I'll do things right, but I'm not going to do it in that way. Don't tell God no. And I think, we've got a lot of friends who've affirmed, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is right. You can connect with these kids in ways that no one else seems to be able to do as easily as you can. Now, I thank God to do youth ministry and children's, not doing children's ministry, keep trying to throw the family part in, but that's going to be new to me. The youth ministry I've done is, it's based on knowing the people. I just did a funeral for two of my high schoolers' grandpa because their family said, you're the pastor in our family. And having opportunities to be able to interact in that kind of way far, far benefits any panic I might have. Now, when a long night of Nerf war and everything's over, I go home and I sleep hard, and I'll recover. I don't go home and as excited as I came in. That's a good question. And I guess accountability-wise, making sure there's people in my life. So as the church, as elders, are there people in my life who are speaking into it, who are asking me how am I doing? Am I seeking help regularly? Because I can't do it alone. I'll fry. I'm watching the clock back there, and it says 7:30. Is there any other questions? I'm doing fine. I like talking, but.
Are either one of you two musically inclined?
Jenny played the flute
And clarinet.
Growing up in school. My parents had a huge value in teaching piano, and so I did piano and music theory and trumpet and guitar and things like that. Now I spent a lot of money on lessons and instruments and trying to practice these things until I realized that my rhythm is no good. I'm not good at piano, so I should try this. And the underlying thing was that my rhythm's just terrible. And so I've accepted that. And I'd like to think that if I'm in a situation where there's no musician, there needs to be one, I can get by. But I'm much better behind the soundboard. I know what I want to sound. I know how to get there, but my rhythm just can't do it. Yeah, fishing pole. Yeah.
You're in. Any other questions? We don't want to cut it short. We're not on a time crunch, but don't want to keep you here longer than necessary.
I'll hang out here after if you want to ask something privately. We'll be here. And we're doing it again tomorrow if you get another question.
I know somebody is sitting there quietly with a question you've been thinking about for the night, so somebody give us one last question. How's that?
There's a cookie in it for you.
Yeah.
I was asking Jen, what do you see as your role in church here?
That's a great question. Good. I kind of wanted to transition into that. So, having the teacher's background, I definitely am more inclined to do the elementary age kids and be with them. When we were talking about doing foster care, I said, great, infant to grade 5, let's do it. And Brian's like, how about grade 6 through high school? And so we've got the spectrum covered. Since being at the church that we're at now, the children's director position has opened up twice. And the first time it was offered to me, and I went full force of, if I didn't have to teach, I could partner with the youth guy over here, and this could become a whole family deal. And we could do parenting groups, and we can enable staff. And so then he told me he applied to this job, and I said, hey, that's kind of like what we were talking about 2 years ago. So it was kind of cool to see that, to have this opportunity, I guess. I definitely see partnering with him. This past year that I haven't been teaching, I watched kids about Seth's age most of the days in the week. On Wednesdays, I've left pretty open, and after lunch, we go over to the church, and I put Seth down for a nap in the nursery, and then I spend the whole afternoon helping him with whatever he needs, planning youth stuff, or if it's some admin task I can do, that kind of a thing, and that's been the highlight of our weeks, I think, being able to be together. Where was I going with that? Seth takes 3-hour naps at church, and at home it's like an hour and a half, so I'm all over it. But it's more than that.
I remember when we were dating, I think even before we were dating, officially, we kind of did this weird best friends sort of dating, everyone knows we're dating but we're not type relationship. And so I think before it was anything official, I talked to our church and I said, I think I might be on the path to be a pastor. Are you okay being a pastor's wife? And she just kind of smiled. So now it's not a 2-for-1 deal either. 2-for-1 is kind of like a buy one get one free in my mind, where it's okay, if I'm doing something, we get double the productivity, double the work. We're not there. I mean, she's good at what she does, but definitely a team thing. When we do youth ministry, she's there. She's led girls Bible studies for me, and she's been crucial in connecting the group. I can't. And so that was one of our questions when we were starting to talk with Pastor Matt was, what are the expectations here for Jenny? Because we had someone that worked with me who's said, this is a couple thing for us. You're going to pay us for both of us. We're both going to do this together. We can't be separated type of mentality. And it's not that. And so Matt said, Sherilyn's on staff. And so we're okay with that. But there's no expectation that, okay, she needs to do the pastor's wife thing, leading women's Bible studies, leading children's ministry, because that's what pastors' wives do. And so we've been excited about that, but at the same time, that's part of what we want. It's part of, we want to serve ministry together.
Sure, I'll find a balance.
I never successful man then.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Google Assistant is coming in now. And with that, no. Good questions tonight, guys. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Like Brian said, they'll be here hanging out for a little bit afterward, and so feel free to grab both of them or one of them and ask a question. Thank you guys for just being transparent and sharing part of who you are with us tonight, too, not just answering questions for the sake of. So we appreciate your openness with us there. So, and Nancy's holding up the ballots back there. If you need to take one of those with you, go ahead and grab those too. So, would somebody just volunteer to close us in a word of prayer?
I can.
Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just praise your name, and we just know that you have all things in your hands, and that if we just follow your will and follow your ways, that you will guide us. We ask that you guide this church in this upcoming decision. We just know that the search team put a lot of hard effort into researching and doing what the elders asked them to do. We just want to follow your will, and that is the most important thing in our lives, is to follow you, to see where you're leading, and just to do as much as we can to help. Lord, we just pray for Brian Jennings' travels, and this weekend, we just ask that you be with them as they get ready to leave, and give them good weather. And for those that are traveling around from our church, we just ask that you have put a hedge of protection around them and give them a safety. All this we ask in Jesus' name, amen.